welcome to Delicious Discussions, a show brought to you by ADPList and myself, Brandon Groce, that is dedicated to bringing senior-level designers and creatives alike to our design community to talk about their design and career journey, challenges they face getting into the industry, how they got into the position they are today, while also sharing tips and advice to aspiring designers and how they can reverse engineer a similar path for themselves or how they can pave the best path for themselves. On top of that, at the end of each of our live sessions is an opportunity for you, the audience, to ask our guests the questions you've been itching to get the answers to and get their direct feedback. So with that said, without any further ado, let's jump into today's session and introduce you to today's fine guest. With that said, let's jump in. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Delicious Discussions with me as your host, Brandon Groce. We have an amazing guest today. His name is Jason Carlin. He is the VP of Design at Kajabi, former VP of Design at Weedmaps, Loot Crate, and design lead and product designer at Google, and even better, inventor and senior director of product over at an amazing startup called TextPlus. And also, he's got a really cool license plate. More on that later, but anyways, I'm not gonna steal his thunder. We're here to discuss with the man himself. Jason, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing okay. Like we were just talking in our pre-show banter, I'm down in my third cup of coffee, so I hope I can keep up with you. And I got my favorite mug, so I think we're in good shape.
Yo, I saw that on your Instagram, and I forgot to ask you this morning or this afternoon. Which I was like, we're gonna need that as a souvenir.
It's fantastic. It was a very special gift. Yes. From the girlfriend before she was the girlfriend. So now it's the favorite mug.
It's beautiful, guys. We're gonna have an affiliate code later. We'll all get tuned into where we get this beautiful mug. But I want to say hello to you guys in the chat. We have Manal, Melissa, Ralph, Melissa again, Tristan. What's going on, guys? Glad to have you guys in the chat. We have an amazing session for you guys today. Like I said, I'm not going to steal your thunder, Jason. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of some of the line items I dropped for your bio? Who you are, your background, things like that, and we'll just start there.
Sure. So, as you said, I'm currently the VP of Product Design for Kajabi. I've been doing that for about 2 months. All told, I've been working in tech for nearly 25 years now. I have been and managed designers and developers, researchers and product people. I've worked at big companies and small companies. I've been the first employee and inventor at one or two places, and I spent 7 years at Google being, part of the machine. I've worked at some big companies that did not operate in tech, where I was doing tech for them, which is always interesting. Yeah. And in those 25 years, I've bounced around quite a bit. I moved out of the startup game for 7 years with Google. I got back in recently, and now I'm working mostly with kind of mid-sized companies. We took Weedmaps public last year, so that was a brand new experience. We're thinking about whether that's going to be in Kajabi's future. It's been a really interesting ride for nearly 25 years.
I bet, man. That's a lot of. That's what we're gonna try to get out today from you. We only have an hour, but we're gonna try to squeeze 25 years out in the drop of an hour we have today. So, and while we're talking amongst ourselves, guys in the chat, what's going on, Felix? How you doing? Ladies and gentlemen in the chat, we're gonna have a Q&A segment at the end of this. But while we're going on and we're chatting along, this isn't just for me and Jason, even though we do love ourselves. Go ahead and drop some of the questions that you might have while we're discussing, and we'll make sure to pull those into the conversation. So let's start here, Jason. I think it's absolutely awesome. In the beginning where you worked with startups, I love that you have inventor / senior director of product for TextPlus. I think it's really, I really love, I don't think of myself as a designer. I think it's important to think as an inventor. And I would love for you to kind of explain where you work. Let's actually start here. Your first door into design, but also kind of connecting how you were able to position yourself as an inventor and actually pitch this idea to the company you're working at the time.
Sure, yeah. So my first doorway into design, it was 96, 97. most American houses were just getting internet access for the first time. Site builders started popping up in like 97, GeoCities, a tripod. I ended up using tripod. I was in a band like everybody else I knew. Real bands started getting websites, and so my bandmates said we should get one, and I built one on tripod, and it was just absolutely abysmal. And I was arrogant and decided I can do this better, and I found the view source code right-click button, kind of reverse engineered how to make a really basic website, and it's just, I mean, it was bad even for then, but I made it myself, and I ended up getting asked to make some for some local bands and clubs and restaurants and stuff like that. And then I got my first job as a front-end developer because of it. I did that for a few years. And keep in mind, front-end development at the time was like a little bit of JavaScript, CSS, creative's room instead of the developer's room. And it just came a lot more easily to me. I was the developer that all the creatives were happy to get paired with, because apparently I cared about that stuff more than the other folks. So I would turn in pixel perfect implementations, and none of the other developers did. So that was kind of my first clue that like I cared a little more about design than I did about development. And that was that was starting at a company called Putnam Investments. So this huge like investments conglomerate based in Boston, not a tech company. We had a media floor where they employed like web people and radio people and TV people. It's weird to have it all in-house. But yeah, man, it was a while before I found myself in tech and working for startups.
That's really awesome, and I really think that, I don't know, to me, my this is maybe telling the world a little bit too much, but I'm making a parallel to exactly what you mentioned, when my parents are always like, when we have like get-togethers, they're like, Brandon, are you not in jail? I don't know what it was, but like, all right, let me explain myself, and then we'll go back to your thing, because I know this.
I think you should, yeah.
Yes, I should. I need to back that up. But they say it out of jokes. They don't really mean that. But I kind of hooked on to what you were saying. You kind of look at the direction you want to go, or you look at something that you want to figure out how to make, and you we're gonna use better words, not steal, but kind of take that, modify it. You learn how it's made, and you reproduce it. For some reason, my parents think that's stealing other people's work, and they think that I'm going to be locked up in jail for that. But it's really just being smart about what it is you want to build in the world, and kind of taking the initiative to be like, oh, well, there's this thing that's over here. I'm going to learn how to reverse engineer what it is that's in front of me, and kind of take my, put my career in my own hands and build the things that I want, and also there's the two amazing skill sets: being able to reverse engineer things that you see as an inventor, but be able to pitch that idea to somebody else, being able to sell and also build. So you learn those things very quickly. So we talked a little bit about the inventor piece. Let's talk about the pitching the idea in-house. I think this is interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I was hired by a company called Goji, Gogii, Goji, who were making a interactive text platform. And it was, you can almost think of it as like conversational design, and this is many, many years before that was a thing. The idea was if you're a business, people could text your business name to 60611, which kind of looks like Gogii, get it? And you get back a text site, and it'd have basic business information, and you could converse with the thing and get information like business hours or basic support. And it didn't really go so well. So we started thinking about what else we could do, and I helped put together a pitch for TextPlus, which was, and I worked with one of the founders on this. This wasn't like my solo thing. Yeah. It was a little mini app that would launch group conversations that you could then have in iMessage, which did not support group conversations at the time. It was pretty clever at the time, but didn't do enough. We ended up building on the back of it an entire text messaging platform. As far as I know, we were the first way you could have group text conversations on an iPhone at all. And we were also available on BlackBerry and Android. We were on the iPad. We were actually a launch partner in the iPad, so quick story there. we were available on iPad on day one, which means we had iPad development devices ahead of time. And I swear to God, a very lovely gentleman named Eric came down from Apple with a briefcase in his hand that was just like shackled to him. He just wouldn't let it go. And he brought it into the back room in our office where we had put a lock on the door, put a bracket and a chain on the desk and bolted it to the wall, and put like brackets on the desk so he could bolt the iPads to the desk. And they're in these big, thick cases so you couldn't see the bezel or the home button, and nobody knew what an iPad looked like yet. And so we got to develop on iPads that way, and that's how that happened. Anyway, back to pitching the idea. We figured out that because the founders had a previous relationship with a lot of cellular carriers, because they'd made a company called Jamdat that was mobile gaming, really early mobile gaming, we had an opportunity to create a text messaging platform that the carriers would support. So TextPlus came out. It was, again, the first way you could have a group text conversation. We had persistent interest-related groups that you could join and leave, like communities or Reddits or whatever. We ended up moving into voice communication, and so there was any number of ways you could use the platform. And real quick, the coolest thing about it is you could be up and running texting within a few minutes. We would have given you a real phone number, which nobody else could do at the time because of our relationship with the carriers. You could send and receive numbers from it, group conversations from it. But because it was over IP, we called it TOIP, text over IP, you didn't need a carrier contract at all. So if you're a kid or not of means or had credit issues or whatever it is, you could be up and running, sending real text from a real phone number in a few minutes with no carrier contract. You could even be doing it from your iPod Touch with no cellular radio at all. It's just something that was possible through TextPlus.
Right.
So that was a really fun idea, and I worked mostly with our founder Austin Murray on that. He was a little bit of a genius.
I dig it. So, and why I wanted to go back to this is because you love, we were talking a little bit yesterday, you love the conversation of effectiveness, being very organized, and as you mentioned, like eat the toad. I forget how you put it eloquently, but we've all heard that. I'm just like, oh yeah, he said eat the toad, guys. But there's a whole mindset around that, like doing the hard things first. But the reason why I wanted to go back to this is because, at least talking to you yesterday and going back to kind of your history, I feel like you learned very early on in your career on the topics that you like to talk about, leadership and career advice. You learned the skill of building, how to pitch, and leadership through kind of having to throw things together yourself and taking the initiative of pitching things. So for the people listening, why I kind of wanted to go that kind of walk around the bush about ways to give context, but would you agree that that's by doing those things and having to kind of put things together yourself or figure out how to, I'm kind of putting the words in your mouth at this point, but would you agree that this portion in your career is where you learn the leadership, the what needs to be built, and pitching skills, or is it somewhere else in your career that you kind of built those? Can you break that down for us?
I learned everything at TextPlus. I was there for about 3 years, and while I was there, I learned so much about design and designing for human beings, and I learned so much about, it was my first time managing and hiring. It was my first time sort of pitching anything, and we did it, it was a startup. We started with 4 of us and ended up 50 something when I left. It was incredibly different from week to week and stage to stage, so just keeping up with it meant learning quite a bit all the time. Everything kind of came from that. I think if you're lucky enough to have an opportunity early in your career where things are changing quite a bit and you're needed in a bunch of different ways, and you have to learn on the job, kind of learn on the fly. The hallmarks of my career have been learning on the fly and being in the right place at the right time. It's very much, it's not that deliberate. It's just being open to learning and just getting lucky. And that's what TextPlus was for me. I was very lucky, and I was able to learn the things I needed to learn pretty quickly. Yeah, and then you brought up pitching a couple times. I wasn't pitching to our board. I was pitching to our founders, and they were like pretty chill dudes, and the company was just me and the three of them for most of well, maybe there were a few more of us by the time I was pitching TextPlus. But pitching an idea at a company that small is really different from pitching it to a board or your investors or a larger company where you need to be more formal. I basically told them I had this really cool idea and I wrote down how it was going to maybe work. And Austin did sort of the same thing. I think we figured out we were pitching about the same thing and kind of put those things together. That's all it really took. And the thing that's the consistent through line between early then at a small company and this part of my career is it's all about telling a really compelling story and reading the room and knowing who you're talking to. You need to speak very differently to your investors than your like really chill buddies who are founders. Yeah. I continue to see PRDs and PRFAQs and project overview documents and things for my whole career that don't tell the story in an understandable and emotional and compelling manner. And even with those docs, it's your job to like get people informed and also excited. Then that's a soft skill. Figuring that out is not super easy. And again, I just got lucky that I had guys in the room who were like compatible with my style of communication. And over the years, I've learned how to adapt that to different rooms.
Love it. So what would your advice be? Let's say, all right, because in this too, there's a lot of, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but you can either be like yes or no. Because this is what I see for myself, but it's saying yes to things I have no idea how to do, and then with the fire on one's ass, being able to be like, I said yes, I need to figure it out, and be able to deliver on what I said yes to. Granted, you have some of the structure to, when I say yes, I know that I have the capability of doing this, I just don't have all the puzzle pieces. Is that kind of the same thing that you did in your situation, or just saying yes
Absolutely.
And then figuring out later?
Yeah. And sometimes I say I don't know exactly how to do that, but I'll figure it out. I'm confident I can figure it out. More often than not throughout my career, I've just said, yes, I can absolutely do that. And then you just got to stay up a couple late nights and figure it out. Mm-hmm. And that's been, that's the learning on the fly I was talking about. That's how I got from one stage to the next. Back when I was a musician, I was playing guitar and writing songs, and that sort of was going a little bit nowhere, and the band I was playing with broke up, and I decided I wanted a job. So I went and I talked to bands about playing guitar or bass, like that were established bands, and I just wanted to be playing out again. And I didn't know how to play the bass. And you can play the bass like a guitar player. You can just pick up a pick and start playing it like it's a guitar, and that's fine if you're a punk band, but I wanted to play it like a bass player. So I spent like 3 weeks getting ready for an audition, like trying to train myself to play properly with my fingers and have good form and figure out all their songs. As far as they knew, I was a lifelong bass player. They had no idea. I just kind of like lied, just straight up on the face of it said, yes, I'm a bass player. And I figured it out well enough to fool them for one afternoon, 3 weeks later. And then I joined the band. We played together for years. And yeah, there's this sort of line between bold-faced lies and faking it till you make it. You just got to figure out which one you're going to do and hopefully not be evil about it. But faking it till you make it is, for me, putting that fire under your ass is the best way to learn anything.
Agreed. I think that's a really good piece. And I think this actually, I didn't intend to go on this, but I think it's a good conversation too to have with you. Imposter syndrome / the fake it till you make it sort of situation. Because to me, I'm like, well, if I know I can produce what I say I can produce, it'll just take me some time. I might not sleep for 3 nights, but I'm going to provide exactly what it is that I said that I can do because I have faith in myself. So some people are like, oh, I don't want to lie to somebody, but, and I'm sure you get this a lot too. I'm actually really curious how people ask you the question as well, because some people, they'll be like, well, I want to, kind of like a stop go approach, where they want to learn the thing before they do the thing, versus just say yes and you're going to end up in the same process anyway, just a little bit faster. So do you
First
believe...
off, I probably should have been a little more cautious using the word lie. Don't lie.
Yes.
Don't lie. Faking it till you make it is maybe pushing the boundary, but it's not, don't falsify your resume or lie about your talent or experience, because then you're going to end up in a situation where, like you say, you're going to have imposter syndrome, except it's maybe not the syndrome, because you are kind of an imposter, and that's not going to do you any good in your career if you don't think you can succeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, those are two sides of the same coin, right? Faking it till you make it versus imposter syndrome. It has to do with your odds of success and your confidence, right? If you're faking it till you make it, if you're doing that well, you're confident that you will get past the faking it stage. If you have imposter syndrome, I think what that means is you feel like you're stuck in the faking it stage. You're never going to make it. People are going to figure that out. You make a really good point. It's really easy to move from one thing to the other, from faking it till you make it to the imposter syndrome stage. And I think it's probably about how quickly you can get past the faking it part. Whether you're successful at making it past the faking it part.
And I think there's levels to it too, because like you can be, and I know we're kind of, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you guys listening, words are very challenging, so just bear with us. When we're doing the fake it till you make it, or you guys are hearing lying, we're not promoting these things. We're just trying to convey concepts, and these are the terminologies, how they're presented out in the the universe, or at least how you hear them out on the internet. So there's levels. For example, let's say, for example, pitching was something that was in a particular style, was very new to me, and I basically just said yes to pitching something. I had no idea I was going to pitch, and I basically just for a while just was like, all right, just practicing, learning things of that nature while I said yes to this thing that I have to present. And I felt like an imposter while doing it, but then a series of opportunities came after that to do the same thing again, plus another thing I didn't know how to do. And so it's just like levels to, that's why I don't necessarily like the conversation of imposter, because it's like, when are you not? Especially if you're like really burning your midnight oil and you're really trying to perform, and it's like, all right, you've mastered this skill, onto the next. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because you, with all that you've done, probably have had levels of, all right, mastered that last week, what's the new task? And then felt like back and forth, like a cyclical cycle. And is that something that you felt?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think pitching is such a great example. And by the way, my advice about pitching and about writing, whether you're doing a medium piece or a PRD, my advice is start with a bulleted list. Include everything you want to talk about, and the most important stuff, make it bold. And then cut that in half. Get rid of the stuff that you know that you can, even if you don't want to. And then start putting together your document or your deck or whatever it is, and then cut it in half again. And that's how I get to a story that might be compatible with other human beings. And that to me is the biggest desired outcome in putting together a pitch or telling people a story or trying to make something compelling. Put in links if you need to for people to deep dive or drill down on stuff. But that's how I think about it. That's what I learned about pitching. That's what I learned about how to communicate with people. That's how I write my emails a lot of the time. I think like I said, reading the room, being able to work with people, having that level, even if it's, we talked about this yesterday, I don't love the word, but empathy. People are busy. Make them excited, make it easy for them to get excited about what you're doing. And that for me was the key to learning to pitch.
Yeah, because you really have to know, one audience is going to be so different from the other, and being able to at least, like when I was like, oh, ASDF, and whatchamacallit prior to your awesome cup. And I was like, oh, okay, this might be, there's some parallels in each other's lives, and, we got some good laughs before the call happened. And we can see each other in a little bit different light, and friendships blossom and become that way, or start that way. But okay, back up. Are there for me, because I was about to go off the deep end, had to catch myself. So let's talk, because there's a couple people in here wanting to kind of inquire about pitching. Were there, while you were listening, I have a couple of things myself that were really helpful for me, but while we're on the topic, are there any resources that were really valuable to you in, or people that you studied, or pitches that you studied to kind of help you in that process on your first roundabout?
So I think starting with the bulleted list, bolding the most important things, cutting half of it down, writing a first draft of a deck or a doc, cutting that in half. I think that all sort of came to me naturally because I did have that empathy for the people who were in the room. I really wanted to make it easy for them to get excited. The other side of a pitch is providing evidence that the concept will be impactful or successful. And that's a lot of market research and projections and just kind of a lot of faking it till you make it. A lot of providing evidence, whether it's super well founded or not. And that did not come easily to me. I don't think that comes automatically to very many people. You have to learn that you only know that by already knowing that. And so the way I figured that out was looking at other pitch decks that we were able to get through whatever means necessary back in the TextPlus days. Stuff that we got from we were backed by Kleiner Perkins. I think we probably got access to some of their pitch decks that they'd received. And then, like I said, my partners who I was launching this with, in particular the one guy I kind of put this together with, had been running tech companies for a while and had done a lot of pitching. And he was able to help. I learned a lot about how to describe the possible success of a concept from those guys, from the people around me. Now, I wish I had I'm looking at my monitor. I wish I had some tabs I could pull up and talk about great resources that I've used for putting that together. But honestly, come across successful pitch decks wherever you can. Take a look at the metrics that they're using and how they're using them. And is the story around that metric or those metrics interesting to you as a human being? And figure out whether you can tell a similar story in a similar way. That's what I would do. That's what I would do if I had to go back to pitching right now.
Agreed, man. And I love what you said. Just you really have to. Everything is reverse engineering. There's so many paths that people have walked, and it's just like, okay, we're at ground zero. I have an inkling, like you were saying. I know I can, write out the story, cut it in half, simplify it. But when there's other things that I'm missing, who did it already? And I really love, this is what I kind of used to study. There's Slidebean, where it's just like you were saying, you had access to all of these other, pitch decks that other people the success that you're working towards, they've already done the work. So now you're like taking your natural direction and pairing it with somebody who's done this stuff. So if you guys are in the chat and you guys are curious about pitch decks, things of that nature. And I love a lot of business, like the creator of Twitch. I forget the other founders and stuff. Like if you guys look on YouTube, there are like major people with like some serious dollars who are just doing YouTube just cause, and they're doing like Jason Kahn. He does like startup deck teardowns, and they give feedback to startups, things of that nature. You can submit your pitch decks. But yeah, Slidebean, check that out. All right, back to you, Jason.
Yeah, Slidebean is cool. I only just discovered that a little while ago.
You were holding back,
sir. They do a
sir.
really good job. Yeah, so I forgot about them entirely. So they do any number of things. I'm looking at the site right now. They've got a builder that you can use, but they also provide services. So obviously I've never used anyone like that, but that seems like a really solid resource and a little more formal than most others. And then you touched on YouTube, and YouTube is what I did at Google for all those years. And I watch hours of YouTube. I watch YouTube every day. Almost everything I've learned in the last 10, 15 years, I learned on YouTube. So if you need to put together a slide deck, watch some YouTube. If you need to put together almost anything, YouTube's a great, there's a lot of, signal to noise problems, but I find it's not that hard to separate the wheat from the chaff and find the good stuff. And yeah, YouTube is a great resource. I go to YouTube before I go to Skillshare or anything like that. Every time. I also have YouTube
Wait,
up
you
on
go
my
to
second
Skillshare
monitor
before
for about
YouTube
half
every
the
time?
day. Other way. I'll go to Skillshare after I've exhausted YouTube.
Got it. That's
yeah.
really amazing, man. I want to. I know you. It seemed like you had more to that, but I do want to kind of like bookmark this in your brain before I lose it in mine. I do want to learn. I do want to kind of open up the box of what you're learning today and what you're focused on there. But
Yeah.
were you about to? It sounded like you were about to continue your sentence there.
No. I'm sure I wasn't. And if I was, I forgot it entirely. No,
Thanks, Brandon.
what am I learning today? Some of the stuff that I've learned recently has been more kind of tactical practitioner-y stuff. It's really important to me to keep up on my design skills. I feel like it's kind of BS to manage designers if you can't design yourself.
Right.
I have managed product people and developers where like I get it. I've done product work. I've done development. I can speak the language, but you feel a little bit like an imposter again when if somebody on that team was out for the day, you couldn't legitimately take over for them.
Yeah.
So with design work, now that I focus more exclusively on design, it's really important and it's super fun to just keep up with the practice. So I do a lot of learning about that, especially these days. A lot of stuff about more advanced Figma techniques. I spend a lot of time where we've got a really solid design system that's kind of foundational, so we're extending that. I do a lot of learning about how design systems are supposed to be put together. When you get beyond just a component library and start turning it into a system, we're working on that. Shout out to Gina Ann and Clarity Conference coming up next month. If you're interested in design systems, look up Clarity Conference. The other thing I get asked constantly, I get asked this all the time, is how do you, that's fine, I can learn Figma on YouTube, or Figma's got resources. How do I learn to be a designer slash manager? Or how do I learn to be a manager slash leader? Mm-hmm. And I mean, shit, I have no idea. There are resources out there, and there are a lot of articles, and they're all the same thing. It's, 5 things emotionally intelligent leaders have that others don't. Like all these articles and listicles, and they're almost all nonsense or identical to one another. How do you learn this stuff? There are some courses you can take for best practices. There's some tactical stuff you can do, like learning phrases and techniques that are often successful, that go against normal human nature. But there's only a little bit of that stuff. Yeah. I'm the first to say I'm not the best in the world at anything. I'm not the best in the world at management or leadership. It's really important to me to keep learning and progressing there. But if anybody has some great resources for like those of us around me, those of us who ask me for advice here, I'd love to know. The only thing I consistently refer to is Harvard Business Review, who does really great work in their print magazines. They've got really great online articles and emails, and the email and print stuff is both actually really nicely designed, which lends some credibility to them, I think. Yeah. But other than that, I don't know. And I get asked it all the time. I've promoted several of my employees into management roles, and they want to learn more. And it's a really tough thing to figure out how to coach around management unless you are approaching things like as they come by on a case-by-case basis and just giving some input and oversight. Which all comes from the gut, or HBR. We actually did a program at Weed Maps, which is where I worked before Kajabi, called Strive. And this was a third-party product, and they did management leadership training. And I didn't do it. It was for folks who were a little bit junior to me, but everyone seemed to like it. I think maybe if we had it at Kajabi, I would take it anyways, so I could learn more about what management curriculum is like. Yeah. But again, it's about 2 things. It's about learning on the fly, learning on the job, and it's about having some empathy. So that's again kind of the through line throughout my career. Is how I learned to do everything I do, is learning on the fly and having some like realistic idea of what other people are going through.
Yeah.
I think I meandered there. I think I went way off.
No. That would
3 cups.
That was good. That's a nice little bite there. So while you take a sip of that coffee, I think it's so. We were talking about this yesterday. It is technical skills are so because there's the 1, 2, 3, the ABC. Like there's a formula. This is how you do blank. But in leadership, it's like okay, because things change all the. In situations, you have to be adaptable. Is essentially what you're saying. In your role or in roles like this, things that you can't anticipate, you can anticipate some, but some you can't really anticipate. You just have to have the skill set of knowing, okay, this problem showed up. What do I need to learn to mitigate this problem or potential risk? Like that's the skill set in itself. I think that everybody can take from this. It's not and I think this is just my personal opinion, but I think that's the challenge with how traditional education sets us up where it's just like, well, when you learn from A to C, you'll be successful. They never really teach the elasticity that one needs to really have, or at least mention that this is the elasticity that we need to have, and just have, hey, when you're in these situations, we're going to give you the skill sets to problem solve, to mitigate any risk that is about to occur. I think that, in my opinion, that's how it is. Would you agree in that? I think, literally, I'm summing up what you said in my own words.
Yeah. Well, then I definitely agree. I think,
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't stuffing your mouth.
Yeah. No, that's right. I think, again, like, the only thing that I think you can really be taught is tactical stuff. Like, there's management terms. We have, like, literature at my company. I'm going to talk about, how to have difficult conversations with your reports. There's an article or two about it. You're reading an article about something that's a soft skills type of issue, and the only thing that you can pull out of that is like, here are some phrasings that are helpful, and that's great because you're usually so close to the problem that it's hard to understand what types of phrasings might be most effective.
Yeah.
But the other way you can get there is taking a step back from the problem and having that empathy and thinking, what would work for me if somebody was communicating something like that, right?
Right.
It really is just, I would say that the best way to get started being a manager is having had a manager, which most of us have. So if you've ever been managed and you're a thoughtful person, you probably have some ideas around what could have gone differently or better or worse. And it's just about thinking about it and having that ability to reflect and maybe as you're thinking about becoming a manager, paying more attention to how you're being managed and how the people around you are being managed, and just clocking it from the good to the bad. And then some of those resources are probably helpful for tactical stuff. I've coached some of my managers about communication techniques a little bit, but it's very like kind of rubber meets the road stuff rather than the philosophical stuff is a little different.
Yeah.
Philosophical stuff, I'll bite into that for just a second. The thing that I tell everyone about your job as a manager is your job is to make the life of your reports easier. That's your number one job, so that you can help them do the best work of their careers, help them demonstrate impact and benefit to the company. Your job is to make everything easier for them. And the thing I tell people who have managers is your job is to make your manager's life easier. Help them do their job better, take stress off of them, help them show effectiveness and impact, and just trust that in both directions, credit will be shared, everything's going to come out in the wash. But yeah, everyone's job is to make the lives of the people around you easier, and that's the litmus test. And that's my philosophy around management and being managed.
I agree, man. I think that's another good nugget there. And because we're about to move into the 15-minute segment, so if you guys have any questions, start sliding them in so I can prepare them and not like have 10-minute pauses in between, because your boy's illiterate. With that said, I think while we're moving to the Q&A segment, there's been questions here pertaining to going back to the imposter syndrome and fake it till you make it. I had the question and then I went on my spiel, so give me a second to kind of pull it out.
And in the meantime, thanks to everybody who's adding some questions here instead of watching the Apple event. I think that's really nice of you. I really appreciate it.
Guys.
Don't switch away now. They're going to rebroad. Don't switch away now.
Yeah. You stay where you are.
Stay where you are.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of things, comments and things that nature coming through. What would your advice be to somebody who wants to be in leadership but has the fear of because I think that's what it is. Like, to move where you are, you literally have to be like, these are going to be the problems that I'm going up against, and I need to learn how to mitigate these problems that I'm going to have. So what would you say to somebody who wants to have or traverse the path that you've gone down and continue to go down, but are scared? What kind of things helped you in the space of being like, I said yes to this, I need to figure it out or I'm gonna get in trouble? Maybe not get in trouble, but you put your own self on the line, your own reputation, things of that nature, and you want to make sure that you pull through. What kind of things helped you?
This is a bad answer to a good question, but if you're moving into management from an IC role, one of the things that can be really difficult is being promoted within your own company to management and beginning to manage the people who were previously your level peers. I haven't done that. And I have promoted a couple people from IC into management, and it's gone okay, but it's an uncomfortable thing. So that's a scenario where I think getting some guiding and mentoring and creative direction experience, and maybe even getting some management experience for your current company is a great idea. But I do advise people, if you're making that jump, consider making a jump to a different company as well, where you're brought in and you're known as a manager from day one, and there's no like weirdness from previous relationships or anything like that.
Got it.
That's kind of a bummer of an answer. I don't think it's the only way to go, but it's kind of a bummer of an answer.
I don't think it's a bummer of an answer. There's always paths, and I think that's one that I probably would not have given, and it's one that we now have our eyes on.
Yeah, and then the next thing is you can do the reading. Like I said, there's not a lot of great resources that I'm aware of. There are lots and lots of books about this. What is it? Making a Manager is really popular these days. I think, like most good books, it's 90% common sense articulated very clearly, and 10% new ideas that are mostly valuable. A lot of books out there like that. A lot of books that I can sort of recommend. Radical Candor is the same thing. It's 90% common sense articulated well. I really enjoyed reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is about 1,000 years old now, but kind of a blast to read. So yeah, there are books, there are articles. None of them stand out to me as great places to learn to be a manager. It's another thing where you just got to learn on the job and hope that you have a manager who's interested in helping you grow in that way. And for me, it's taking things on a case-by-case basis and learning on the job. And just having empathy. If you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody, pretend you're them, and what method of communication would be effective with you. Bringing the hammer down on people doesn't usually help. You got to be able to, and it's not as easy as sandwiching comments, negative stuff between positive things, because people see right through that. and you would see, just imagine with some empathy, you'd probably see right through that too.
Right.
So, it's just all
both
about
read the same book and you're like, I see what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. You read the same article, you got the same email in your inbox that very morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah, that's
cool.
a terrible set of answers.
No, they're all, well, the thing is that not everything, it's all about like puzzle pieces, right? So you might be saying maybe just to like sugarcoat it a little bit, but I think that's a good answer, because maybe I might have go at it a totally different way. Your perspective and your experience brings you to that knowledge. That's expensive knowledge. Not everybody can put things together through one's own experience and knowledge to be able to be like, if I were to do this again, or if you ask me this advice, this is what I would do. And I think it's still really valuable, because when you pair, that's why we're talking to individuals like you. If we can, the people listening or myself, be like, oh, well, I got this knowledge from Jason, paired with my knowledge, well, now I can go another direction, or maybe there's an opportunity with exactly that you gave to us, I can run the play. If you catch my drift. So more
I
knowledge.
do catch your drift.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say it one more time. To me, the best thing you can do to learn to become a good manager, become a good coworker, be good at being managed, and be good at being a leader is to have that empathy, which again, I hate using the word so much, it gets used all the time, but to understand what would be effective if you were the person that's being communicated to, what would help you understand and what would help you take action on it and be effective with it. And that means taking the time to be really thoughtful about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, rather than just self-organizing and following human nature, which usually will lead you to say something at least kind of clumsy. So it's about being thoughtful and empathetic for all those cases. And that's more valuable than I think anything I've learned in any of these books or articles or my daily HBR email.
I agree, man. So I thank you for that. So with that said, that will be the period on we'll leave that there. But let's move into some Q&A, guys. Really quick, if you haven't already dropped some, we have quite a few here that I have highlighted. First one is from Paulavi, roaming back to the conversation of fake it to make it. What is your opinion on somebody who you're interviewing for a position at your company, and this is also very challenging to answer because you have to create context from the person, create a story for the person that you're interviewing. Or let's say let's create another you. All right, this is other universe. You're not at Kajabi. You're applying to, or maybe you're going to Kajabi or whatnot. And they need something that maybe you haven't had experience with, but you know you can accomplish it.
Yeah.
Does the fact that you haven't done it but know you could do it, is that considered lying? And if you also were the interviewer, how would you view that? Or how would you approach the conversation? Like, how would that conversation go?
There's a big difference between lying outright and saying, yeah, I've done this, and being a little more genuine and saying, yeah, I can do this. And you gotta be careful about where that line is. And sometimes it's about coming straight out and saying, I haven't done this, but I'm really interested in it. I wanted to learn. I know I can do it on the fly. Some of it is you say, yeah, I totally think I can play the bass. And then if you're doing the thing I don't recommend, you say, yeah, I totally play the bass, which, fine line. I can think of a couple instances where I didn't list a skill on my resume under the little skills list that we all have, and I was asked if I had that skill, and it's tough. Like right in that moment, you're like, well, I know I can do this. It's so similar to what I've done before. I've seen it being used. I've had some experience with the software, the technique. And what you do is you turn around and usually you say something like that you didn't use at your last job, but you know you can do it and you're really interested. And to me, that last part about being really interested is all I hear. Like if you seem sharp, the rest of your resume is impressive, I can see evidence of you like learning skills throughout your career, and you tell me you're interested in something new, I probably will trust you. Learning shit you don't want to learn is a great way to be bad at stuff. So I think again, it's about sort of reading the person. And if you're the candidate, finding a way to persuade your hiring manager that you can and should and will be able to do a thing, even if you're not already doing it.
Got it.
Fine line. Don't lie. Fine line.
Yes, do not lie. And you put it
lie.
eloquently. It's all about the line, and what we're talking about is a little bit challenging because of the words that we have to play with. But the line and knowing what you can actually do. Like if your track record, like if we were talking and you see my resume and we're both having a conversation of what I've done, and you see, and I can explain like, hey, I was able to do this at X company or for this company, and it's repeatedly you see that I wasn't capable of doing this thing, and I talk you through it, but I was able to do way more than we thought was even asked of me, or I over-delivered. If that is the track record of the person, that's just, again, another context where that's like person A, person B, if it's also easy when you're having a conversation if there's holes in the person's story, unless they were practicing like for 48 or a week on what it is that they're trying to come in and somewhat pitch you on for their own skill sets. It's all about the line and confidence, capability, but yeah, don't lie.
Don't lie. I had a candidate come in who we wanted to work on our design system stuff. And so the obvious question is, what's your experience with design systems? And the experience was little to none. Like, I've used UI kits. I know material design, but I've never built one.
Yeah.
We divert from material design all the time. But I could tell very clearly that they were very skilled in Figma and using Figma in a technical way, even though they hadn't built a design system. I asked, have you done this? And they said, no, but I want to. And it was just clear to me. I mean, this is kind of a basic example, but clear to me that they were probably going to be capable of learning how to do this. And our design system is a little on the sophisticated side in that we've got one-to-one relationships between everything in Figma and everything in React. And we're moving over to a design token system. And like, I still felt like this person was going to be competent in design systems pretty quickly, just based on other skills they'd had and evidence of growth I'd seen when they walked me through their portfolio. They didn't lie to me. They just said, I know I can do this, and I believe
Right. Exactly. This is
didn't hire him, but that was for other reasons.
Great example, but I didn't hire them.
Didn't hire him, but that was not the reason.
Yeah. Thank you for that. All right, we have 5 minutes. There's like 2.5 things that I want to kind of pull in here. You just let us know when you have to roll out. But I want to go back to where you were saying, because I totally agree. Doing things that I'm very much about building on your strengths, because if you have to look in a direction where you know that it's not it takes like 3 times the amount of effort to build on that skill. In my opinion, you got to find somebody else whose skilled that really is and kind of loop them into your group. But there's a question here. It's just like, how do you go about asking for support or if you need help in your position? Because I'm bringing this up also because you mentioned if it's not a strength, I'm not doing it. So when you're in a situation where it's something that you're not used to, what do you do to get support?
Yeah. I've never had a mentor in my entire life. I've never had anyone I would consider a mentor necessarily. And I've had a lot of absent managers. And I think it's hurt me. I think it's hurt my career. I think it's hurt my skill set. I think it's hurt my ability to rely on people for that sort of guidance. I've reported directly to a lot of CEOs who were just busy being CEOs, and none of them had any experience doing the work that I do. So I've had to learn to be comfortable asking for guidance from my peers and from friends of mine who are experienced but were not necessarily mentors. I don't know if I'm answering the question you asked or some other question, but I think it's really valuable to have a manager who can feed back to you and be valuable to you. And if you happen to have a mentor in your career, take advantage. It's a gift. It's something that I've seen transform people's careers, and I wish it's something that I'd had more experience with myself. Is there more to that question, or where'd I go with that?
No, I think I'm going to dig into it a little bit, because I think kind of what you're saying is, you couldn't necessarily, and this is the same thing for me. I either need to find somebody that can help me with the thing I have no idea that I'm up against, or I need to find information. So it's people or information. From pairing back to what you were talking about earlier, your internet love affair is YouTube and Skillshare, and that's where you get information. So I'm kind of putting two together. You don't necessarily rely on people, but you rely on information, and that's where you get your support.
Yeah, I think so. It's great to have partners at work you're not afraid of, and if you need to ask questions and show some vulnerability, you can. That can be scary to do. That can be a scary thing. I've reached out to my peers at the last few companies when I needed advice, and it's gone really well. People have been really supportive. For me, I'm not afraid to show that kind of vulnerability. But it can be, the sort of thing that bites you in the ass a little bit if somebody's like, well, it's that's messed up that he doesn't know how to do this already. But I haven't really had that experience. So in lieu of having like really hands-on managers who know how to do the work that I do, it's just a matter of having partners at work you can trust. That's a really good thing.
I like that. And to me, to sum that up, I think it's really important you bring up, this is kind of bringing in one of my words at least, having a track record is one, or having confidence that you can do the thing that you're tasked with, but also having the vulnerability to, regardless of the outcome of it, you're like, okay, I have this task. I really don't have a clue of what it is that I need to do by myself. I need to go fish for something to help me complete that task and then actually do the thing. So it's track record and confidence, the ability and willingness to be vulnerable when you don't know something, to go find and fish for information, regardless of if someone's going to be like, why don't you know how to do this already, etc. Because on the outskirts of it, your confidence and your faith in yourself is going to allow you to complete that task, and that's really your brand. People are going to be like, oh, well, it's not the fact that he or she doesn't know how to do this thing. They just operate and they're going to get the task done. They just might be missing some information. And I think that's highly valuable.
Yeah, the name of the game is being effective. And if you have big swaths of your responsibilities that you don't know how to perform, you're not going to be able to be effective in the way that you should be to progress your career. And finding that information is really vital. And one of the loops that keeps you in your problem with imposter syndrome is being afraid to show vulnerability. These people already suspect I don't know what I'm doing, and if I go asking questions, they're really gonna know. And you just gotta, you gotta get past that. You gotta think yourself through it in as much as you can, and ask smart questions, which people respect, and then be smart with the information you get back. But I think vulnerability is different from, demonstrating that you are an imposter. I don't think you should conflate those two things.
Yeah, I agree. I think we will leave it there. There's one last question, and then I want you to end us off with anything you'd like to leave with us. Last question is from Pallavi, and are we good on time for you?
Yep.
All right, cool. So Pallavi is asking, going back to early in our conversation, is there a one most helpful thing that you learned on the fly which kept you further in your career in the right direction? That was horribly asked. Is there a point in time in your early career where you were learning on the fly? What is one thing that propelled you the furthest? Is there a gem there for us?
Yeah. I'll go with two things. And the first is kind of the tactical answer, and it's maybe a little unexpected. It was CSS. I was the first person I knew who learned CSS. I got to be friends with folks in the burgeoning CSS and implementation quirks communities. CSS Zen Garden was a brand new thing that was happening. It was completely inspiring. I was the one who brought CSS to my company, and it kind of completely changed the way that we worked. It was really a painful transition. But that worked. It turned out CSS was a good idea, and I got a lot of credit and credibility from being this really young kid who helped change the way we build things and save time and make more money. So that was a matter of me being passionate about the work I was doing and keeping up with trends in tech and making a bit of a gamble, saying, I think this is going to be the way of the future, and then being right. And it really worked out for me. And well, this was at an ad agency I was working at, so they weren't super interested in technology. This was a means to an end. So sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time, even when it comes to things like technology. And the other thing that I learned that propelled my career forward is this thing that I keep touching on, which is part of empathy, which is being able to tell a story in a compelling and brief manner to the audience before you. So whether that's in your job interview, in a meeting, in a doc or a deck that you're writing, if it's just you've got an elevator pitch or a couple of them and for different audiences, like whatever it is, like understand that no one has time for your bullshit. Like make it easy for them to listen to you. Make it really easy for them to get excited about the thing that you're saying. Avoid communicating just based on instinct and human nature necessarily. Don't self-organize. Write stuff down. Make a plan. I think at the end of the day, effectiveness and being effective is the most important thing. You can't do that unless you are able to bring people along. There's a lot of things that are required to be effective, but unless you can bring people along and get them excited and have them care about what you're doing and you want to do, that like shuts the door. You can't really be effective that way.
We're closing it there. That was that was really good. That's a nice, really chunk there. I hope you guys got a lot of value from today. But Jason, where can we find you? Your journeys? How can we follow up with you? And if people have additional follow-up questions, how would you like them to contact you?
Sure. You can find me at jasoncarlin.com. There's not a lot there. It's mostly just a place to find my contact info and resume. So you're welcome to check that out. If you want to know anything about who I am, my online handle is usually escapist. So Instagram.com/escapist is a good place to get to know me. And then, I'm findable on LinkedIn. And all those things are linked to from jasoncarlin.com.
All right, much love. All right, guys.
Oh, and obviously ADPList. I'm on ADPList. So if you go and search for me on ADPList, then you'll find me there.
Of course. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for Jason and I hope you guys enjoyed today's segment. Jason's links are down below, so you don't have to press all of your fingers and thumbs into the keyboard. We set you up very nicely. Jason, I want to say thank you for giving us an hour of your time today. You're really awesome, and you dropped a lot of gems today, and I look forward to continue talking with you, my friend.
Awesome, Brandon. Thank you so much. This was really fun.
All right, well, if you got to run, I'm going to close out the segment, but feel free to roll out or stay behind. We can talk after that, but I'm going to close out the show, and I'll see you later, my friend. Cool?
Okay, cool. Yeah.
All right. I'll see you. All right, guys. Well, that is today's very first amazing live stream, delicious discussions with our very first guest, Jason Carlin. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and thank you for all that joined. So with that said, take it easy, and that's really it for me. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Take it easy. Tell Felix I said hello. Bye. Enjoy. So much for joining us today for Delicious Discussions. We hope you got all the answers to the questions your heart desired. If you still have some questions for us, either our guests or myself, links to our socials and other forms of chatting with us are in the links in the description. Also, do not forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed today's episode so that you get notifications the next time we go live with another amazing guest. And lastly, if you're looking to have insightful chats with friendly mentors and the ability to book and learn from over 3,146 mentors from world-class companies, that's a mouthful, join the ADPList global community today at adplist.org. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next one. Your favorite host, Brandon Groce, out.